many eyes, are safety. We try to think of it as safety, and so we like to make sure he's going to be a safe driver and put him through the full experience.
Don't really have a need for this 3-point maneuver thing on a farm, unless you're pulling in between 2 cows or something.
I have to replace some time.
Good job.
Oh, was
You
it
did
3 points? Woo!
Not bad.
It was really fun having my brothers and my dad and Tyler here. I think I need to do a little more practicing.
Hey everyone, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. It's Wednesday, April 6th. Do you like this voice? Do you remember when you watched, did you watch Friends? And do you remember when Phoebe got sick and she had that really raspy voice and she would sing and she thought she sounded better when she had a raspy voice? I'm just going to pretend that I sound better when I'm delivering this new tea to you with a raspy voice. It's actually kind of hard to talk today. I woke up with a fever, but I'm back. I'm here, feeling a little bit better. I had a slow morning. So yesterday, we talked about Jana Duggar. She sold a piece of property for she made $105,000 on that sale, and she had purchased the property in 2016, and then she had also sold it just recently, and then this property was supposed to be like where her DIY or her shop was going to be. She had talked about having a shop at one point in time when she was on County 9. So the property was a residential piece of property. It was in Springdale. That is now gone. And some people are like, did Jana really own that or did Jim Bob? I always feel like every property that's in the names of the kids belongs to Jim Bob. That's just my opinion. So we know that Jim Bob has a lot of property, and we also know that Jim Bob has sent his youngest son, Jackson, to the Alert Academy. So we also found out last week that Jackson Duggar is at Big Sandy, Texas, going through the same type of program that his older brothers have gone through. And Josh did not go through this program. I think Josh went through the Little Rock Training Center in Arkansas. And then he was also sent to a friend's house to dig ditches. I actually spoke to a source last week about that. And there was this article that was put out by Distractify talking about Bowman Fidowski saying that Josh had been sent away 3 times. And so I asked my source and I said, do you know if Josh was sent away 2 or 3 times? And they said 2 that they knew of. One was when he went to the Little Rock Training Center, and then the other was when he went and dug ditches. So Jackson doing the basic training in Big Sandy, it'll be something, right? So Jackson's going to turn 18, and actually after a string of like a lot of boys, he's the last boy of the Duggars. That means after he turns 18, the only children that are left at home are girls. Some of the older boys still live at home, but the girls that are still like under the age of 18 are Johanna, Jennifer, Jordan, and Josie. So there's 4 girls still left at home. Jackson was the last of the boys. There was a lot of boys. There was 10 boys and 9 girls. I think there's actually 11 boys because of Tyler. They have custody of Tyler. With Jackson down in Big Sandy, I actually found this a couple weeks ago, and I haven't brought it to my channel yet because I was like, well, this is kind of weird. But now, given the timing of Jackson being sent away, I thought, well, let's talk about this because this is actually a new piece of information, and maybe you didn't know about this. And so I was looking at the LLCs. And you guys know that I've been tracking the number of LLCs that the Duggars have just because there's so many of them. And I know that they're in the world of construction, and it's not uncommon for a single house to have its own LLC, especially when you're doing real estate. There's just so many of them, it's hard to know what attaches to what. But I was looking at new ones, and I noticed there was a brand new LLC under the Duggars, and it was called Landmart. Like Landmart. And I was like, well, this is weird. And I looked up the LLC name, and it was under Jackson. And I was like, well, that's weird. Why would a 17-year-old have their own business? That like doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, maybe, right? If he's doing construction, perhaps. I don't know. It just seems like very odd that a 17-year-old that still lives at home is theoretically still in high school, why he would have his own business and his own name. So then, obviously, I went to the county records and I noticed that that same LLC had purchased a piece of property. And I was like, okay, that's even more bizarre. So Jackson, and I'm just going to say this in name only because I don't know that this is actually Jackson that set it up. Because when I looked at the records of the property that was purchased under Landmark, it was notarized for the buyers, but the seller wasn't notarized. So everyone else was notarized, and the seller just had like a squiggle for their name, and they didn't print out the name at all. And if I'm being honest, it doesn't look like Jackson's signature. I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine what Jackson's signature would look like, but the signature looks more like a signature of someone that signs a lot, which made me feel like maybe it was Jim. So the property was that Jackson's LLC purchased was a sort of piece of property on the other side of the landfill. So if you know where the Duggars live in Tontitown, which is right outside of Springdale, and they actually live right by the landfill. So Washington County's landfill. It's like the huge, big landfill. Property values are cheap around there because of the proximity to the landfill. And if you're actually like at the Duggars' house, the landfill's across the street. So the people that work at the landfill can like see the Duggars' house. So they bought a piece of property like on the other side of the landfill, like way far from where the Duggars are. So not by the Duggars property, just like sort of like on the other side. And it was a piece of property that was part of a trust and had been inherited by, like, it looks like some siblings. And the property was purchased for $35,000. So I'm like, okay, so, well, that's weird. Why is one, there a business in Jackson's name? Two, why isn't there a signature that looks like Jackson's signature? Why isn't there a name for the signature? And why isn't there a notarized for the person that sold it? Usually when it's notarized for sellers and buyers, it's like the seller and the buyer have notaries, the same notary, and they'll place like the person's name. And the only notarized names were the ones that sold the property, not the buyer. Anyways, and then they didn't put the name down, which I also thought was weird because normally they do put the name down for the Duggars. So I'm like, okay, so it seems like Jim is buying this piece of property and he's using Jackson's LLC in order to do this. So that's just my assumption. So, okay, here's the thing. Can someone in Arkansas under the age of 18 actually have an LLC? Technically, yes. There's no laws in the state of Arkansas that a minor can't form an LLC and cannot be the officers of an LLCs or even the agents of an LLC. I had absolutely no idea about that in the state of Arkansas. So legally, Jackson can own his own LLC. Is he actually owning that LLC is a question too, because now he's down in the Alert Academy, right? So there's this piece of property now that is in Jackson's LLC's name. And I looked at all of the officer information, like Jackson's listed under every name. Jim Bob is nowhere on that. That doesn't mean that he's not like a member, but he has Jackson's name all over it. And I have a hard time believing that Jackson at age 17 would be knowing how to file all of these documents. I have a hard time believing that Jackson at age 17 would know how to file as a registered agent, do all of the paperwork, make all of the payments. And I also have a hard time believing that Jackson would have $35,000 to pay for a piece of property. So I was asking someone that knows the Duggars, I'm like, well, why would he do this? And they thought maybe it was to like, spread out the ownership, so maybe he doesn't have to pay taxes or his liability for Jim Bob. And then I said, well, why would he purchase this random piece of property? And they said that he has like real estate agents that will like contact him when properties go up for sale, and he will get stuff for really cheap, especially in that area because it's not a high desirable area because of the proximity to the landfill. So they said it's probable that he might have found out about this property and from one of his broker friends, and he just made the decision to form an LLC in Jackson's name and then purchase it. My question is that if Jim Bob is doing all of this and he's putting all of this stuff in his kids' names and it's not in his name, and again, I don't know this for a fact, but it seems like if anything were to happen to Jim Bob, because his kids' names are on everything, it sort of places them in a position where they could actually get in trouble too if something were to ever happen. So say the IRS or someone starts auditing all these LLCs, which I can't believe there hasn't been at this point. I don't know if there has been. It just seems like there's something going on here. But anyways, it seems like the liability is spread. So it's like his name isn't on everything. His kids' names are on something. So like, you know, do they even know that they're on these properties? Kind of like, you know, how Anna is signing documents. Do you think Anna has any clue about this kind of stuff? Do you think this is all Jim Bob? And why then would he, I mean, has he run out of kids to give properties to? This one has me scratching my head. So you have Jackson starting a business, but then only weeks later he's going to the Alert Academy. It doesn't make sense to me. If he were going to be starting a business, I would think he would be staying home to work that business, which makes me feel like this isn't his business at all. Okay, so Jackson's name is getting used by maybe Jim Bob, and this piece of property in question is bizarre. And one day we are going to get down to the bottom of what all of these LLCs are. What are your thoughts about it? Tell me in the comments below. Bye, guys.